What's up, everybody? Cinephile Mike here. Today, I am joined by director Daniel Everitt-Lock to discuss his feature documentary debut, Our Planet, the People, and My Blood. This film follows Alan Owen, the son of a British nuclear test veteran, as he fights for recognition and justice for thousands of vets and their families affected by nuclear weapons testing programs. Daniel, congratulations on your debut feature, and thank you for taking the time to chat with me today.
Yeah, cheers, Mike. Thanks, mate. Yeah, it's been a quite a journey.
So this film arrives at a unique moment when the Merlin database has just been declassified after all these years of campaigning. When you began filming this
Yeah.
3 years ago, did you believe that you would witness this breakthrough on camera, or were you preparing for a different ending?
No, we were completely prepared for a different ending, man. No, I did, like the what ended up happening um was about halfway through our filming, they actually found out a lot of this stuff to do with the Merlin database. So it kind of like we had to pivot halfway through.
And Alan Owen, he's not just a subject here. I mean, he's an advocate, he's a son, and he's a relentless campaigner. As a filmmaker, how did you navigate being, close enough to, capture his personal grief, but also stepping back to let the political fight speak for itself?
Yeah, I mean, working with Alan is like amazing. We actually met him on so when we first started this film, we kind of we created a little pitch was the idea, and we had these five veterans and Alan that we went and interviewed in the UK, and um, Alan kind of opened our eyes to this much wider campaign of things, which was all of these other communities on a global scale that have been affected by nuclear weapons testing. Yes, we're talking all the downwinders, the Marshallese, the uranium mining communities, the people out in Australia, Kiribati, just all these different people beyond what our original intention was just the atomic veterans. And so we kind of saw this other opportunity of working with Alan and following his story, but using the objective view of like the whole global situation as a way of enhancing the story of the veterans and what they're going through right now for compensation and justice.
And as you were going, I mean, this film spans four continents, and you talked about some of the communities you were at. I mean, you covered the UK, the States, Hiroshima, Marshall Islands. How did you prevent such a vast global story from losing that emotional center?
Yeah, well, I hope we achieve that. I don't know, man. Um, it was. I mean, it's the difficult thing, and like to try and bring it back to earth on something such a kind of broad scale was for me was you're taking a big 30,000 foot objective, bird's eye view of this thing, but the thing that brings it down right to the very emotional heart of it is each individual interviewee's personal story. So it's all about kind of bringing a face to the story. If I tell you about like this has affected 2 million people, the idea of trying to like comprehend 2 million people, you can't really do it. It's like, it's hard enough to imagine a full like stadium of like 50,000 people. You see that and you're like, wow, that's crazy. But then to try and imagine that's like, 2 million people, that's bonkers. You can't comprehend it. So when you put a face to the story, you bring this emotional element to it. And that's the reason why we traveled all this distance to meet all of these people individually and get their first-hand accounts, because they act as the like steward for each of these stories on the global perspective.
Nice. And with your first film, most people on their first film like to maybe take on one job, but you decided to take on multiple here. Um, so serving,
Yeah.
I'm curious. So serving as, you did the directing, you did the editing, like you talked about going to meet these people, and when you were shaping all these different testimonies, the archival material and your own cinematography, how did
Mm.
you go about an approach finding the balance between like your talking head interviews, your archival footage, what you captured on the ground to move?
Do you know what forces that balance, man? Money. Or a distinct lack thereof anyway. So I mean that's the thing. My idea of hell really. I'm a cinematographer through and through. I have been for
Right.
14 years, shot multiple features, TV series, that's my job. Um, this was always a subject that I wanted to approach as a director. And after working on a couple of doc series with like Amazon and a few feature docs with a couple of different people, outside of my usual kind of scripted work, I was like, okay, I think I've got the ability to be able to kind of take on this project myself as a director. Um, but all of these things, really, every part of the journey we did with this, we were trying to raise money. Obviously, from the start, we create a pitch, put it out for development funding, for development money. We put it out for public funds, all sorts of kind of ways of trying to finance this thing. Nothing came through, honestly. It's been a really hard subject to approach because it's got the political element, obviously. It's got, it's a worldwide view. So public funds don't look at it as like a thing that's like, for instance, we were producing this out of Canada. So Canada didn't see it as like a Canadian enough film, which is completely fair. The Canadian element is very minimal kind of thing. So it's like, so trying to get access to certain funds and stuff was really, really difficult. So that forced us into the thing of, it forced me into a position of having to do, wear multiple hats kind of thing. My idea of hell before this was editing a feature documentary, and I swore down I would never ever do that. But we got forced into it. We had an editor originally. Things didn't work out, unfortunately. So it was kind of like, well, there's only one other person that knows the footage as well as me and him. That's me. So it was kind of, well, money's tight. Let's go for it.
And as you said, your background is as a cinematographer and you did some work for Amazon and other companies. So
Mm.
as you were filming this and capturing your content, did you find that you were consciously adjusting your visual style, or how did you go about approaching it for this film?
Yeah, from a visual approach, the idea was always to be try and be very authentic, and be very real and kind of grounded in more of an I mean, we had to shoot digital, but kind of like I wanted to, for instance, what we did with the pictures within the documentary, for instance, rather than just sticking them on a timeline in Premiere or whatever, and like putting it in the edit digitally, we'd take the camera, take a lens baby to create this kind of faux idea of depth, print the photos out, and then shoot the photos and get this kind of really organic feel out of something rather than just sticking in a timeline and it becoming this digital asset kind of thing. So it was things like that that we wanted to approach in that way. I've worked with Panavision for a number of years, so they sponsored me for this and helped us out with cameras on certain parts of our journey and stuff as well. So that was really good. And then there was a lot from a visual perspective of because of budget restraints and stuff, I couldn't really do the things that I wanted to do, so I couldn't use the usual lenses that I'd love to have and everything else kind of thing. So we found ways of I was using DZO Cat zooms for most of it, a couple of lens babies and stuff as well. And it was finding ways of, I didn't really like the clinical kind of sharpness of the DZO. So it was a way of what can I do to adapt these to kind of make them different. So we were filtrating front and back. I created actually these custom filters for the back of the lenses that we 3D printed and put these to give us this kind of much 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 more characterful look out of the lenses. So yeah, it was kind of really, I've done budgets as a cinematographer from micro nothing all the way up to high budget tier A kind of stuff. And what was nice was just doing this and kind of having all these restrictions where it's like, okay, I can pull in all these stupid indie ideas that I've developed over the years and apply it to my own thing. That was kind of fun actually.
And the one piece you didn't do here, the score, Thilo Schaller's score, it's
Yeah,
really
yeah.
beautiful and haunting, and yet it does't overpower the testimony. So, how did you approach using music in a story that already carried so much emotional weight?
Do I mean the amount of ideas I threw at Tilo and he was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. But how about this? And it was just like, oh yeah, actually that sounds way better. So I mean, you got to give credit to Tilo, man. This
Mhm.
guy is an absolute genius. We went through a lot of ideas of, because there's all of these like locational based elements and different cultures and stuff. So it's kind of like, okay, well, what if we took like the Australian side of things, this Aboriginal Australian style, and we did something with that, and then did that thing, and then did something for the American, kind of indigenous thing. Maybe there's something there we could do, and then and so on and so on kind of thing. So we we tried that. It kind of played around a little bit. I think it played a little bit into his score by the end. But the thing we actually settled on most was human voices. I pitched them a really stupid idea from the beginning, which was I want to do the score entirely with human voices. That was it. So no instrumental stuff whatsoever, and we recreate things using hums and ahs and like sounds created with your voice, and it was kind of meant to bring that human element and again that authenticity and that kind of that realness to it. Um, and then that so we experimented around with that, and then what Tilo actually ended up doing was kind of um my musical knowledge is not the best, so it was kind of like he was adapting and editing these sounds that we were creating with voices and making them into things that almost sounded like instruments kind of thing. So really most of the score is actually created using a lot of human voice
Wow.
to sound like other things, and then he's used other stuff as well. Throughout. So it kind of it went through a lot of stages, but yeah, he really took the reins. I gotta be honest, man. He was fantastic.
No, it was really beautifully done.
No, good.
Um, Something I'm curious about. So many veterans groups have really credited this film as contributing to this real world change. How did you go about, reconciling the role of documentary as observer versus, a participant in political change?
Yeah, man, that was never the intention at all. Like, I just wanted to make a film. But it kind of became this thing where the intention from the beginning was just about the atomic vets. And the thing that intrigued me originally was saw a short documentary by this director called Morgan Knibb, a Dutch filmmaker, and he made this film that ended up going out on Vice. Um, it was like Vice's most viewed video ever, as it turns out. This this thing that they had the atomic vets talking about being able to see um, the the flash of the bomb being so bright that they were asked to cover their eyes with their hands, and through their closed eyes, they could see the X-ray of their hands and the people in front of them. And that was like that visual kind of stuck with me as this crazy concept. So that's what brought me into it.
Mm.
And then so that was really how I wanted to expand it. And it was kind of this thing that I realized that no one really knew about this story, and all this testing and stuff. It's not really an education because it's kind of swept under the rug a lot, and there's a lot of secrets to it, and there's a lot of, it's all atomic secrets for all these different countries. So of course there's a lot of like secrecy and things about this topic. Um, but then when we met Alan on that initial idea of what I wanted to make along with the some of the vets, it became a thing that it was like it expanded into that worldwide view. And then meeting all of these different people as we traveled 150,000 kilometers
Well,
in the 2 years that we were shooting
yeah.
and then a year of post. And like meeting all of these people, it hits you, it does change your thoughts and yeah, who you are a little bit, honestly. And so it kind of made me transition a little bit into that thing of, well, this is a really fascinating subject, but there is a side to this where all of these communities have been so deeply affected. And if the one thing I can do is bring more attention to the issues, for then all these different organizations and communities to then use that and leverage that attention into change, then that's great. So really, that's my role is just trying to bring as many eyes to that as possible, and that's my way of activism, I guess.
Mhm. Well said. So as you've moved from, cinematographer to feature documentary director, and you've got the first one under the belt, right? You always got to get that first one under the belt.
Yeah.
What would you say is one best practice you learned through this process that you look forward to taking into your next project? And what might you say is one of your biggest learning curves? This is like the educational moment of the interview.
Yeah, fair enough. All right. Well, yeah, firstly, for anyone who's looking to hire a cinematographer, I'm not just directing documentaries anymore, man. Like that is The next thing I'm directing is a comedy or a bloody horror or something else, man. Like I have, it's been too depressing for I got to do something funny. I think the biggest thing probably learned from this, actually, I mean, there's so much I learned from this, man, because like the way we've had to go about everything was so independent, like ridiculously indie style, even right to the point that now we're, going out into theaters and stuff and into cinemas in the UK and then eventually the US and stuff. It's like it's you're doing a bit of everything, you know. I think it makes you I think the thing that I've learned best is really an appreciation for every department, even the ones that aren't necessarily just on set, that I deal with day in, day out as a cinematographer. I have a great appreciation for, hair, makeup, production design, art, all of these guys that I work with on the daily. But then, I think now there's also an even bigger appreciation for um, some of the trials and tribulations of a producer, for sure, and some of the ways that a director will have to, I've directed a number of shorts, but like a feature, particularly a documentary, is a whole different beast. I think um, there's a level that you don't see as a crew member or in any other position, actually, that the process that a director has to go through, on a feature of this scale kind of thing. Yes, I mean that's probably the biggest thing moving forward. But yeah.
Nice. And one last question. When audiences walk out of Our Planet, The People, and My Blood, what's something that you hope stays with them?
Really, I hope it gives them the same impact that I had when I first saw that short documentary like 9 years ago. That made me turn around to my friends and family and be like, "Have you seen this thing? Like, did you know about this?" And their response was all the same thing, is that they hadn't. If anything, there was a very minimal amount of knowledge, but no like full understanding of how crazy this situation was. And that's what made me want to make the documentary, ultimately from the beginning. So I really hope that, and from what we've seen so far with we're just about to release on a world premiere on the 12th of March. But for
Mhm.
the limited audiences that have seen this so far, the reaction has been the same as what I had 9 years ago. And that's all I've honestly wanted, is to, create that same kind of fascination, that shock and awe into a subject that needs more attention.
Nice. Well, Daniel, thank you again for this conversation and congratulations on bringing such an expansive and deeply human story to the screen.
It
So,
is.
as Daniel
Thanks, man.
said, Our Planet, The People, My Blood premieres at the Prince Charles Cinema on March 12th. Be sure to check your
Mhm.
local listings for additional upcoming screenings as the film continues its journey. If you enjoyed this conversation, please make sure you like, comment, subscribe. It really helps to support independent film coverage and filmmaker interviews like this one. Daniel, again, thank you so much and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thanks so much, Mike. Yeah, and all info is on atomicblood.com, just for anyone who wants to, check it out.
We'll put that link in the descriptor notes.
Thanks, man.
All right.